And I know he has planned bigger for us than we can often see for ourselves. Okay, so 2014, I was accepted to the IP&T PhD program. I see Dr. West laughing back there. At the time, my youngest daughter was 9 and my oldest son was 17. And I had already gone to a year of auditing classes. I started with Dr. West Foundations class. Some of you taken that class. And took Dr. Ganchar's classes for a year before I was accepted in 2014, and thought I would get through really fast. And this is my family when I graduated in April 2020, best graduation time, right, as COVID hit. And my kids had grown up. I had 2 daughters-in-law, and they were both expecting my 2 granddaughters at that time. So my family had grown up during the time that I was here, but I still graduated, even though we did not have graduation. And I'm grateful for through those years, there was a lot of support for me being a single mom by the great professors in this department, which I really appreciate. Hi, Dr. Graham. How are you? There he is on the screen.
Cammy, he's going to just look at the
okay, not working. Okay. One more picture I wanted to show. The other day was February 28th, and I was walking to my religion class, and I was like, it's February 28th. Why is this day so important to me? And then I remembered it was 2 years from one of the best days of my life, my PhD defense. And you see there, Dr. Graham, Dr. West, and Dr. Leary, who were on my PhD defense, my PhD committee. And it was such an amazing day for me. And I wanted to show this picture as a reminder to you that wherever you are, if you're doing your PhD or your master's, you can get to that defense day. A week later, BYU totally shut down. But I was so grateful for COVID, but I was so grateful to have had at least that defense day. And it will always be such a great day in my life as a culmination of all the work here in IP&T. Were you able to, did that work out? We don't know.
I would like to try. That's okay.
So I want to start off. So that is just a little of my IP&T story. And I have a couple of other stories to share today, just about how much I have appreciated the great mentoring of the professors that you have in the department as we go through and talk about mentoring. But I want to start out by asking, who has been a great mentor for you in your life, and how have they made a difference in your life? Is somebody that's been a great mentor for you? There's a chance for you to raise your hand and answer. So.
Don't get as old as I am without having had a lot. Maybe particularly as a woman, I've had a lot to I remember one job I started, the dean came up to me first minute she'd ever seen me, and she just gave me a hug and she said, "You're going to be great here." She didn't know me from Adam or Eve, but it set us on a path where we were going to be mentors.
That's so.
I knew she was someone I could trust, and she was willing to mentor me.
That's terrific. Thank you so much. Who else wants to share somebody that's been a great mentor for them? Dr. Graham.
When I first came to BYU, it was a really tough time. BYU, well, it was a tough time for me. There was a lot of stresses, kind of like graduate students. And Russ Osgood was here at the time, and he kind of took me under his wing. And when I was struggling, oftentimes he just dropped into my office and chat with me, or give me suggestions about directions that I could go. And I really appreciate it. And not only the formal mentoring, but like just being willing to drop in and chat and see how he's doing that.
I think he's been a great mentor to a lot of people. Right. Thank you so much. Okay, well, I hope that you can think about people who have been great mentors to you, because we've all had great mentors in our lives, and they make such a difference, right? And can have a lasting impact. And I think what I hope everyone gets out of our presentation today is how we can be better mentors to others, whether that's in a university setting, whether it's in a business setting, whether it's in a personal setting, volunteering. There's so many ways that we can mentor. And I hope that, some of the ideas that we'll talk about will help you think of a few ideas that you can use in your life to be a better mentor. And I just want to say that I appreciate so much the mentoring that I had through my many years of being here. From first, I'll say Dr. West, he was just assigned as my mentor, but I feel like I just lucked out so much. He was so great to me through so many years of really challenging circumstances for me as I went through an unexpected and difficult divorce. And sometimes I just didn't know how I was going to keep going in the program. And he was so patient with me and helping me. We'll talk about persistence later, keep moving forward in doing the work that I needed to do later. As I wrote my dissertation, I felt like I asked him a million questions about different things, and he contributed so much to the research that has ended up being published. And I haven't even told you, but the third article is going to be published, so that's great. So I think, and much credit to him that all three of my dissertation articles on mentoring have or will be published. And I just appreciate so much all that he did to help me through that process. And also I want to mention Dr. Graham, who helped me stay in the program many times when I wondered if I would be able to stay. He had a lot of talks with me when he was department chair about how I could make that happen. And I just appreciate so much the vision that he had for me in really seeing that I could complete my PhD even through extremely difficult circumstances. And I think one of the research findings you'll see is that having that vision for students and other people that we mentor is so important. So grateful for how he helped me with that as well. Okay, so college during COVID, my research particularly focuses on higher education, but like I said, it's applicable to many different areas of our lives. This is a recent New York Times article. College during COVID has been difficult and students have struggled. I think as a college instructor for undergraduates, that's been one of my biggest surprises is the struggles that undergraduate students are facing that I don't think I faced as an undergraduate student 25 years ago. So just to quote this, over the past decade, the rate of depression, anxiety, and serious thoughts of suicide has doubled among college students, according to Daniel Eisenberg, a professor at UCLA and a principal investigator of the Healthy Mind Study. And the pandemic has only intensified those trends. And I'll just go down to the bottom. On the positive side, we will say on the plus side, they reported higher levels of resiliency. And then this very poignant comment by the student, Cassie Ganto, a second-year student, offered tutoring services this semester to first-year students, but she noticed that many students who sought academic help did not need it. They needed to talk, which I think is quite telling about the role of mentoring. It's not so much the academic help that students need, but the personal help that they need in that mentoring role. So why does effective mentoring matter? Not just mentoring, but effective mentoring. Why is that so important in what we do? How many of you, first, let me ask, how many of you are teachers in some capacity? Do any of you teach those the education classes? So raise your hand if you're, okay, so quite a few of you, right? Why is it important that we are effective mentors, not just mentors? Dr. McDonald.
It is a scary thing as a student to go into something brand new, right? So having someone who can support you and strengthening you, it's as essential, I think, as having expertise in the subject. Because it's kind of like crossing a threshold into a new way of life. And without someone to guide you through that, it can go too scary for a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's actually one of the findings we'll talk more about, is that your skill is not as important as your willingness to support the student, which, you know, as a professional, I mean, you can think, well, how about all the expertise that I have in my field, right? And that's great, but it may not be what matters the most to students in mentoring, right? Thank you. Anybody else? Yeah. Is it Tyler?
Effective is sort of implicit in the mentoring. I probably wouldn't consider someone a mentor if they weren't effective. They'd probably be an advisor or someone that's talking to, you know, but a mentor, I think, is effective.
Yeah, I think that's a good point too, right? That probably it defines more the term, right, of mentoring, right, is that they're effective. That's good. Anybody else? Yeah.
I think it matters because, like you had mentioned before, I think like Dr. McDonald was saying, sometimes we have like a mentee may have all the willingness, all the desire to move forward and progress, but maybe hitting walls where they just don't know, like, what is the next step? How do I'm encountering these obstacles and I want to move forward, but I don't see the path forward. So just have someone be able to kind of, you know, lift you up a little bit so you can see, well, here's some options that you have. Here's some things that you can do so that you can channel the desire you have without just feeling like you're hitting roadblocks.
Right. They help them see a path forward, right? Not just the here and now where they can get stuck, right? But they help them see that path forward to success, right? In the future, even if they're facing difficulties, right? Good. Okay. So could I get someone to read this definition? I feel like this is a good classic definition of mentoring to base our discussion on. Okay, go ahead.
What is a mentor? Mentors are advisors, people with career experience willing to share their knowledge. Supporters, people who give emotional and moral encouragement. Tutors, people who give specific feedback on one's performance. Masters, in the sense of employers to whom one is apprenticed. Sponsors, sources of information about and aid in obtaining opportunities. And models of identity of the kind of person one should be to be an academic.
Great. Hopefully you see, thank you. Hopefully you see yourself in that definition somewhere as we go ahead and talk more about mentoring and what it is. This is one of the quotes from one of my dissertation studies. I did 2 studies with BYU Pathway missionaries and their mentoring efforts with pathway students around the world. And one was an online study and one was they were in-person missionaries. And it was amazing to see their mentoring efforts with these pathway students around the world. And especially, of course, this was pre-COVID, but it became even more relevant as all of education moved online in light of COVID, right? To see how their mentoring efforts might be replicated in other aspects of higher education. So I love this quote, and it's actually the title of one of my articles. We overwhelm them with hope and the idea that everything is possible. And I think this is such a great goal for any mentor in any capacity, that you want to help those that you mentor have that hope and that idea that they are able to accomplish the impossible, things that they feel like I may not be able to do, you are able to inspire that confidence in them that they can do it. And through hard work and through the support that they have from you and from others, they can accomplish specifically their academic goals. So how do mentoring principles apply to your work that you're doing in IP&T? What are just some of your initial thoughts on that? And I don't know exactly what you're doing, but tell me how you feel like mentoring might apply to some of the things that you're doing and the jobs that you have or the work that you're doing. Yeah.
Well, there are several of us who work for Viewing Online.
Okay.
A really big emphasis of Viewing Online is helping the TAs to really connect with their students who are in an online course rather than just either like a question answer point for them if they have a question. And so that's like a really big emphasis we are trying to work on, is really kind of bridging that gap, helping the TAs be that mentor, be someone who's supportive and proactive rather than just someone who's kind of like off in the distance that they don't. So, yeah, that's a big project that we're working on.
And that's great because online students are even more at risk than in-person students with retention and persistence issues. And so it's even more important that they have that mentoring support. So that's great. Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking about the definition that you just put up about mentoring and how broad that is, that, you know, it can come from a peer or from a sponsor or from a teacher or from, you know, there's so many potential ways to be a mentor that in some way that's like, it's like a mental decision. Like, am I willing to take on that, you know, that role in my interactions with my fellow students or in my interactions with people that I might teach later, or, you know, just to kind of take on that ideal that I want to make my relationships such that I could be a mentor to someone else, or that I could be mentored, I guess. But.
And that's a great point as well, that so much of mentoring is that decision that I'm going to implement the tools to mentor effectively, because a lot of people want to mentor well. And I know as I've talked to professors both here and at other universities about their efforts to try to improve their mentoring, most want to mentor well, but it's about implementing those tools, you know, and you don't have to implement every tool, but you have to try to put into effect at least one or two tools to improve your mentoring, right? You've got to make some effort. Some people are just inherently great mentors, and a lot of those are the ones that come to mind, right, when you think of great mentors. But most of us, we can improve our mentoring by working on some of these different mentoring tools. Great, thanks. Anybody else? Yes, Dr. Al.
You can help me, Tina, Tony, Rebecca. They just finished a study of South Park County, which is a organization part of the county schools that actually teaches inmates. And one of the things one of the takeaways I took from your presentations was how much those teachers were both teachers and real mentors, and actually surrogate moms, one quote. But one of the disheartening findings is how they didn't have all the tools. They were working with how old the computers and
20 years old.
20-year-old computers. What were some of the other obstacles they had?
Inconsistent classrooms and inconsistent student experiences, you know, that just how their health and their mental health and their trauma kind of informed their behavior. There were some barriers there.
One of the things that's become clear to me is that we can be the best mentor in the world, but we need to still have some of the best tools and support and help and infrastructure to be able to, you know, even during COVID, we need the tools to be able to communicate at a distance.
Right. It's not enough just to think about it. You have to actually put some of those into practice. Yes, Dr. Graham.
Well, I was just going to say, one of the things that I've been thinking about as you've been talking is how much mentoring is based on relationships. And I think one of the ways this can apply to students in their IP&T work is to think about their experience in IP&T, not as just a set of courses they're doing or set of assignments they're doing, but what relationships are they developing? And I think if they'll think about it that way, you know, not just relationships with faculty who are going to be mentors, but also think about it as relationships with students who are going to help, you know, maybe students who are a little more advanced than them in the program or something else. They think about the program that way, as opposed to, you know, a bunch of courses that I'm going to complete. I think their experience will be completely, you know, different. Kind of experience.
Yeah, and I think especially if you're, you know, especially if you're here for a long time doing a PhD, right? You can really develop some of those great mentoring type relationships with people. And I know I did during my time here, friendships that, you know, / mentoring relationships with, you know, older students, as well as even peer, my research doesn't deal with peer mentoring, but as well as peer mentoring relationships with other students that have benefited both my personal life and my research so much. So, yeah.
As part of this is jumping ahead to something we can wait for, but I was just wondering, in your research, as we're talking about like how it applies to IP&T, what you found about student attitudes towards mentoring. I think a lot of times, as a student now, as an adult student who has been a teacher, I look at my opportunities to seek out mentors very differently than I would have as an undergraduate or as a high school student. And I'm just wondering if how you see student attitudes factoring into how mentoring relationships work and how to foster those student attitudes.
Great question. So let's talk about those findings. That's right at the top of my list. So going into the mentoring research, and again, Dr. Cummins, I want to thank you for all your help with this and that 750 class. So one of the important things to understand is the key to establishing mentoring relationships is establishing trust between mentors and mentees. If you don't have that trust, then you're probably not going to have an effective mentoring relationship. And you think, well, how am I building trust between me and my students? Example. So let's go into that more. So here are the 3 top mentoring activities as listed in studies by students. Feeling respected as an individual, being a role model, meaning seeing their mentor's role model, and providing empathy. Now, interesting what's not here, right? Professional experience, right, or expertise. But these are the 3 top mentoring activities. And as you think about this, I just want to give a couple of examples from IP&T, and then we'll talk a little bit more about this. But one, when I came back to school, I hadn't been to school in many years, and some of my first classes were with Dr. Yanchar, and I felt so intimidated. I had a master's degree, but I felt so intimidated coming back into those classes again. And I felt like whenever I asked a question, Dr. Yanchar was always so understanding of, you know, I felt like there were bad questions that took a lot of, and I'm a confident person, but I felt like it took me a lot of courage to ask a question. And even if they were bad questions, he was always so understanding of me as a student. And I always felt so comfortable and welcome in his classes. And I really appreciated that. Dr. Rich, I wanted to say something about him. I was in one of Dr. Rich's classes, and due to some personal circumstances, I had to drop it. And when you only have 4 students in the class, it's pretty awkward to be the student who drops that class. And I really was horrified to even tell him that about how he was going to react. And he was so kind to me, said, Camey, it's no big deal. Don't even worry about it. And I have never forgotten that, how He helped me in that situation, which was a very difficult personal situation for me. He made it so much better by his reaction to me in that class. Dr. Kimmons, I can't remember the name of this class, but it was 665. It's the one where you draw, was that it? One where you draw cartoons. And I was in the class with a lot of really amazing Caroline. This is my daughter, Caroline, by the way. I didn't introduce her. She's UVU graduate here today. Anyway, I was in this class with amazing instructional designers and who did these amazing cartoons, and mine was horrible. And Dr. Kimmons, I just thought, what is he even going to say about it? You know, we all had to show them up on the screen, and he said something like, Cammy, that is really great. It was like a pickle or something like that. And I just thought, wow, that is, you know, I'm not like humiliated in front of the class. He really made me feel validated in my cartoon drawing in his 665 class. Dr. West, go ahead.
Interesting, Cammy, is, you know, I think as we're listening to you, I think we're all probably thinking, yes, our educational experience depended on these kinds of things, feeling respected, feeling empathy, and all this kind of thing, having role models. But those aren't the kinds of learning objectives that oftentimes instructional designers have in their minds when they design instruction. And I think that's maybe the lesson of your presentation here, is that we need to do more. We need to realize that education involves things beyond cognitive objectives in the curriculum, and that realizing that the social mentoring component is part of a good learning experience.
Well, and if you turn to my handout that I gave you, and see, you know, the experiences of some of the pathway mentors, you see how they fit these into their learning instruction. For example, in mentor vulnerability, one of the pathway mentors said, by frankly admitting weaknesses in a general manner and how we manage those shortcomings, we worked through times in our class where things did not go quite as they were supposed to. The class members were able to see how imperfect mentors can still strive to reach the goal of a successful class. So one of the ways that we create that empathy for students is by sharing our own challenges, right? In the class, we are not the perfect instructor. And I know I've seen that in my own classes in the last semesters at BYU. As we share that with our students, they're able to better build that empathy from us. I don't know, do any of you have any thoughts, Dr. Hall?
Doing this PhD in IP&T years ago, Dr. Sudley's. And I'll never forget being in that class and he asked a question. Paused, and then he said, I'm at the edge of my knowledge. And I thought, oh, I can't believe, you know, Dr. Sudweeks has an edge to his knowledge. And it was just, you know, it was the only time, first time, the last time, the only time that, but it meant so much to us that he was honest. And he told us, yes, since he didn't know.
And that's an amazing thing to say to students, right? I don't know. I think that's really, I mean, that's, you know, makes such a difference. Okay, I'll just go through these a little faster. 94% retention for students involved in mentoring. And also they have a and as they participate in mentoring. And with the persistence, I think it's also important to note that the contact with the mentor doesn't increase the persistence as much as how often the mentees go to the mentor for help. And so again, it's developing that relationship that helps increase their persistence, which is how they continue in their academic studies over time. Also very important, and we've mentioned this a couple of times, that mentors need to help their students see a vision for their career and post-college plans. There has to be something more than just the here and now. It can't be just the here and now. It's got to expand beyond the semester, beyond the year, to, you know, graduation and beyond. It's so important to help them have that vision. Goal setting and planning for a student's future, some of the most important mentoring responsibilities. And I'm going to say something about Dr. McDonald here. So when he and I, when he was my mentor in helping me learn about instructional design and write this paper, I really did not know that much about instructional design, really not hardly anything. And he would say to me, you need to set goals every week about what you're doing. And I would say, well, what goals am I supposed to set? And he would say, well, those are your goals. You have to figure those out. And because my knowledge was limited, it was really hard for me. I really had to do the research and find out what I was, what I was doing with my study and how I was going to do it and what that, information was that I needed to look up. But he wasn't going to give it to me. And as much as I wanted him to, it really helped me in learning the things that I needed to know to write that paper, which was so important for me to publish at the beginning of my academic career. And so that's something that I really appreciated about him. And one thing that I've seen as an instructor the last few semesters here at BYU is the importance of goal setting and how that motivates students through the semester. And having that goal, it keeps them focused, and then they can reevaluate it in the middle of the semester and then come back and look at that again. But having that goal at the end of the semester, but having that goal keeps them focused on not just the learning outcomes of the class, but where they want to go beyond in the class. And you see, you see again on the pathway mentor comments, which I think is such a great summary of the importance of goals. It says, this is the second time we have started a pathway cohort, and we have learned some important things we are going to do differently this time around. We are going to do more to keep students focused on the future and the goals they need to set there. Students who experience difficulties lose focus on their goals first. They get overwhelmed and they get behind and don't finish. If we can incorporate some aspect of goal setting and achievement into each week's gathering, students will experience greater success and complete their education. And I know I've seen that in my own experience as well. Any comments from anyone on goal setting? I really think any of the professors have a comment. Dr. Kimmons?
I guess the recurring question for me is we talk about the importance of empathy and understanding and how that relates to still holding students accountable and helping them to holding high standards for them, right? I think that sometimes one of the things that I've wondered about is like, as I am more empathetic toward my students, is that the signal to them that their goals aren't important. If they don't meet their goals, then I'm going to understand and everything's going to be okay, right? And so, I don't know, something, because I have heard people say you can be too empathetic, and I don't know that I agree with that, but talk to kind of how to navigate holding high standards versus.
Well, it seems to me, just based on the research that I have read, and the, I think the current research is still unfolding with the, the post, I guess I don't know that we're post-COVID, but the ongoing COVID issues. So I think we have to keep that in mind, that it's been a challenging time for students, right? And we maybe need to be, as instructors, we maybe need to be more empathetic than we've been in the past. But we need to still encourage them in their goals. And if they need to modify their goals, then maybe they need to modify their goals. But that same article that I quoted to you earlier said that students were disappointed that the professors who had been so empathetic during the height of COVID had kind of gone back to their very strict pre-COVID stance, and students were still kind of in the suffering mode. Dr. Graham?
One of the things I was thinking about this is just that knowing how to navigate this depends.
You're just recording.
We're all it's required to deep knowledge of the student or the person that's being mentored, because you think about this with my own children, right? Like, if I really know my children's capacities, I can provide a level of challenge that's not gonna overwhelm them because I know them well and I know their context well. If I don't know them well, I might inadvertently set a goal that is beyond the kind of place where they can get without falling down. So I think this is why it's such an important part with mentoring and setting high expectations is you can set expectations that are too high for any student. But knowing them, knowing their context allows you to kind of navigate that space in a better, maybe more customized way.
Yeah, I think that's great. And, I think one of the important findings from the pathway mentors was that they saw was that, they had been setting goals for their students, but it took the students setting their own goals to truly be successful. And while, of course, as instructors, we're going to have goals for our class based on the learning outcomes, but we also have to realize that their greatest success is going to come as they set their own goals, set and accomplish their own goals, right? When do I stop for questions? What time?
Seminar at 12:50.
To 12:50, okay. So let me just give one more point and then I'll take some questions. And these are all on your handouts, so you can go back and look at them. Using multiple methods of, actually, that's not the one I want to do. It's quality rather than quantity interaction matters most in mentoring relationships. I think this is one of the most important findings in the research is that a lot of times we think we have to have a set number of interactions for our mentoring to be successful. And that isn't what the research showed. It showed that the quality interaction is what matters. And I think about my own interactions with professors in this department, and it wasn't a set number. It wasn't 10 meetings. It was those individual one-on-one meetings at different times that mattered to me that really made such difference. And so I think this is really important for us to remember that as we focus on that quality, that will supersede any quantity. We still have to have meetings, but we need to focus on the quantity. And also, I would just say mentors who lack confidence are less likely to engage in their mentoring role. And so it's important that we have those skills, we focus on those skills, that we have confidence in our ability as mentors so that we can give that confidence to other students. And so, and then just to finish, I would just go back to my original quote where the pathway mentor said we overwhelm them with hope and the idea that everything is possible. And just that reminder that, we have had hope given to us in so many situations that have helped us achieve the things that we have achieved and to be where we are. And as mentors, as we work on being successful and effective in our mentoring role in whatever realm that is, education, business, volunteering, church, our personal lives, we can help give that same hope to others and help them feel that anything is possible in their lives. And that can have lasting consequences that we can't even know. And I think that's an amazing opportunity that each of us have as mentors, and hopefully we can each take advantage of it. So thank you so much. And I don't know if we have any other questions that I'm going to take from us. That was on the, I don't know if anybody else has any other questions that they would like to ask. Yes.
So how are you applying this now that you've transitioned out of your graduate work into other work
Right.
as well?
So like I said, I teach
Personal takeaway.
3 classes and I get to apply it all the time. And I would also say that, the professors here have been a great influence on me. I wasn't planning to necessarily go into academia, and I think often to the examples they were to me in my classes of mentoring, specifically how empathetic they were to me. And I try to show that same empathy to my students. I think is my number one goal. And it's a lot of those lessons come back to me. It's amazing. So
A couple of your points here about the importance of training mentors. And I was just wondering what training resources are available.
you know, I think a lot of, I mean, if you were in a mentoring program, right, they would have specific training available to you. But when there's not mentoring, I know in the religion department, we work on training the religion professors in mentoring. But if there's not specific training available, I think there are other things that you can do. For example, here at BYU, the CTL offers training in different areas. I know I have attended several of those. You know, there's, especially with diversity and belonging and inclusion, there's a lot of training with that. And that's an important aspect of mentoring to work on that. So there are different areas of mentoring that you can get training on, even if it's not specific mentoring training. So that might be an idea, Dr. Graham. Oh, sorry. Yes.
Oh, well, my question was related about the training. I just wondered, if you were going to design a training program, like what would you say would be the most important things to include that?
I mean, I think I would say, you know, again, just based on my studies, how you can design your curriculum or your syllabus to find a way to develop that empathy and connection with students in whatever way you can, whether that's, you know, having meetings with them, whether that's assignments that allow you to get to know them. You know, it would be something that allowed you to develop that relationship with them so that you're better able to support them. And then the goal setting as well. Those would be my top two. Dr. Graham.
I was just wondering what you learned about virtual mentors. Like, is there different strategies, different advice you give to virtual mentors who aren't going to have the opportunity to be in person with the person that they're mentoring?
And actually, online mentoring, one of the benefits is that it removes barriers of in-person mentoring. And as an instructor, I have really benefited from this because I do probably more of my conferences on Zoom than in person. And that's by the choice of the students. I sit in my office during the required office hours, and they usually choose to meet with me by Zoom because, and you see this in the findings, that Zoom removes the barrier, or online, right, if you use a different platform, but it removes the barriers that might be there otherwise. And that's also the same for, you know, some diversity issues, cultural issues. Some of those things are also removed online. And so it's a big benefit that way for mentoring of either in-person or online students.
Okay, we are out of time. Thank you so much. For sharing your insights with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Their projects, everything that gets, just keep that in mind.
Thanks, Jason.
Thank you.
Hope that was okay.
It was
Sorry for letting slide.